Hello, welcome back to another very very interesting idea in the workbook for students. Let's jump right into this today. We're on lesson 278 in the workbook, having come a long way indeed, right? Yeah. This idea is very interesting, so let's talk about it. If I am bound, my father is not free. That's lesson 278. This is the day's idea. If I am bound, my father is not free. So let's unpack. Of course, God is free. There's no way that he could be bound. We, however, see ourselves as bound, as limited, as something other than who we are. We see ourselves encased in a physical body, or as the physical body itself, frail, decomposing, subject to disease and decay, subject to a raving global pandemic, subject to all kinds of potential hurt, frustration, desecration, destruction. We see ourselves as limited in the world. Limited and bound mean the same thing. It means we see ourselves as unable to escape this. Yet we know deep down, that's not who we are. And A Course in Miracles happily, joyfully presents that truth to us. I am not a body. I am free, for I am still as God created me. Say it with me. Again, repeat, 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 repeat. That's why the workbook does this 20 lessons in a row, so it remains top of mind. Yeah, repetition's a beautiful tool for us as adult learners, isn't it? Right? Because, I mean, who isn't off on their devices 5 minutes later, scrolling Twitter or YouTube or TikTok? Something, there's always something to rip our attention away. So, quite clearly, we see ourselves as bound. Now, when and as we see ourselves as bound, we don't know ourselves. We don't know who we are. And we find ourselves unable to access the truth of who we are as the Son of God, the truth of who we are as one with God, the thought of God, the extension of God. That's what's meant by created in his image. The image of God, right, is not a body. It's not a male body. It's not a female body. It's not a body, period. In fact, the term Son of God, the term Father, actually, guys, those are simply words. They're symbols. All words are symbols. They're designations. The truth of who we are is beyond words. What today's idea expresses is that when we see ourselves as bound, we cannot access that. Yet we know in our hearts that there's got to be a better way, right? Something led you to spirituality. I'm willing to bet it has been a succession of events in your life that has led you to A Course in Miracles. We know We just know deep down that there's got to be a better way, that all of this suffering is not what we really need to be doing. It's not who we are. Yet when we see ourselves as bound, we cannot access this. So I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about an idea that appears in the text of A Course in Miracles that I read just this morning. What I'm doing right now is I'm simultaneously going through the workbook in this series of videos, which I'm recording for all of you, and I'm also reading the text. I've been reading it over and over for the last few years, and I can promise you that every time I go back through it, I understand a lot more. It's like seeing your favorite movie or reading your favorite novel again and again and again and again and again. You always notice something different because you've changed, you've grown. The novel hasn't changed. The author wrote the words and set them down however long ago they wrote the words and set them down. It's you that are different. It's you that has made the decision for love. Hopefully over and over and over and over and over and over and over again till it becomes your entire experience. So what I want to share from the text goes hand in hand with lesson 278 in the workbook. If we see ourselves as bound and limited, we can't access the truth. In the world, we think of things in terms of us and them. We think of our entire experience as what in spiritual terms we call dualistic. This is what duality is. There's me and you. There's us and them. There's one political party. There's another political party. There are multiple pairs of seeming opposites. In fact, duality is even more pervasive than that in our world. Any concept is dualistic. Space is dualistic. Why? It implies that it's not other space. The United States, for example, as the designation of a place in the world, means not every place else. And everything else is excluded when we name something. Same with your own name. When I say Tomas Garza, I identify with a term. And that means no one else is Tomas Garza unless you happen to have my exact same name. And I know there are people out there that do. But you get what I'm saying. This is the world of the ego. It's the world of duality, where we see things as cut off and split and in conflict. We see ourselves as in conflict with other people. We see ourselves as in conflict with nature, with the forces of nature, with the forces of the financial markets, which clearly we as human beings made up. We see ourselves at the whim of all of these forces and at the mercy of all of these forces. And we find, especially when we allow ourselves to contemplate this, we find that we cannot solve problems on a permanent basis. We apply a Band-Aid, temporary fix to everything when we view the world as in conflict. Conflict perpetuates itself and has no solution, ever. It creates a new problem. When one is supposedly resolved, a new one pops up by design. That is the world of the ego. That's the world of duality. We don't solve problems. The Course famously says the ego's dictate is seek but do not find. This is a manifestation of that. So we cannot find solutions to any question when we're in the mind of the ego. When we're listening to the ego as our teacher, we can't solve anything. What we need is to reach for a different state of mind than the one that continues to create problems over and over. Seems to solve them, wants to convince us that they're solved, but a new one crops up. There's always another bullshit thing that happens, right? What we need is to reach for a different state of mind where we can ask the question, what is the solution to this? What do I do here? And bring the question to the answer. We can receive the answer because it's not in conflict. And in the thought system of A Course in Miracles, that answer is the Holy Spirit. That state of mind is the Holy Spirit. That is what we reach for and invite to run the show. We bring all of our drama, all of our questions that we need an answer to, we bring them to the truth. We allow the answer to simply be. It presents itself. It all comes down to which teacher are you going to for advice, for guidance. The ego, as we repeatedly see in a world of conflict that perpetuates itself, is no teacher at all. What is incumbent on each and every one of us to do is to reach for the teacher with a capital T, please. Your teacher. This is another way of explaining what the Course means by bringing illusions to the truth. We bring our questions to the answer, and we allow the answer to show up in our lives. We accept the answer for what it is. In following the Holy Spirit in this way, it's an aspect of our own mind. We're reaching for a state of mind in which the solutions are always present. 100% certain, no doubt. The doubt, of course, comes when we think we're cut off and separate and in conflict with one another and with ourselves. Not because we all know we can be in conflict with ourselves. So, right. This is very, very interesting, and a bit of historical background in this lifetime for me is I spent several years, over a decade, in the field of alternative dispute resolution. In other words, conflict resolution, which took the form for me of very, very intense high-level mediation between divorcing parents, of all things. Custody disputes, parenting time disputes, serious financial disputes, people in a state of extraordinary stress. Yeah, I spent 13 years doing that. And for 8 of those years, I was a professor of conflict resolution at a major state university in the US. Yeah, conflict resolution. And during that time, it actually did strike me as a bit of an oxymoron, right? Because anytime we seem to resolve conflict, a new conflict arises. See, true resolution means the conflict is gone. It's utter non-existence is shown to us, and we accept its utter non-existence. It's very, very interesting, and it goes hand in hand with today's idea in the workbook. As if we see ourselves as bound, we can't know ourselves, even if we want to, even though we may try one spiritual modality after another. Right? It's like trying one magic pill after another. If we're coming from the mindset of the ego, then nothing is going to work. Eventually, we all accept this. Maybe it's today for you, and maybe you feel like, yeah, not today. Dude, you're making no sense at all. No way. And that's fine. And we all arrive at this conclusion when the time is right for us to arrive at this conclusion that the ego is fundamentally flawed as a guide, as a teacher, and it's ephemeral and doesn't exist anyway. We made it all up. We chose for it. We can choose for something else. That's the invitation, isn't it? That's the invitation in the present moment. Choose the voice for God. Choose your teacher, choose your guide, choose your guides, choose the Holy Spirit. Choose the solution instead of the problem. We've got a perpetual problem on the one hand. We have surefire, 100% certain and effective solution to all problems on the other side. That's the choice we make. And the more we choose our teacher, our real, true teacher, the voice for God, the more we realize, in fact, there are no sides at all. That's why conflict is completely unreal, because there's no separation. There are no sides to conflict with one another. And as always, when I turn on the camera and microphone and share these extraordinary, deep metaphysical teachings from A Course in Miracles, I don't expect everyone who's watching this to just blanket believe what I have to say. There's tremendous value in skepticism. There's tremendous value in going over these ideas for yourself until you reach a point where you realize they make sense for you. Now, that may not come in this lifetime. I recognize that. It doesn't absolve me of the responsibility from turning on the camera and microphone and speaking directly to you from experience. This is my directive, and I will not fail at that. It's up to you to take what I, or any spiritual teacher for that matter, has to say and examine it. Examine for yourself whether this makes sense in your life. I mean, I can tell you that you're watching this for a reason, that you're drawn to A Course in Miracles for a reason. So I invite you to take these ideas and sit with them, practice them. It will be your experience that will help you determine their efficacy. It will be your experience that tells you whether you're putting them to work in your life. Spirituality is all about experience. And on the skepticism note, I always invite it because it's good. We need to have an inquiring mind. We need to question things. Now, while we're at it, you cannot stop short and question some things. like what I say, for example, and not question other things, like the very foundations of everything you now believe that you've been told are, to coin a phrase, God's honest truth, from your biology textbooks, from your mom and dad, from society, from an old pastor at your church, maybe. If you're going to question things, don't stop questioning. Question everything. Yeah, it can be a scary place to be. Understand that it's the ego that's afraid. How do I know? The ego is fear. It is fear. Separation is fear. There's no way that the ego can ever be confident. There's no way that the ego can ever be certain. It's fear itself. And the beauty of A Course in Miracles is that it teaches us that the ego is simply a mistake. It's simply a mistake that we can bring to our teacher for correction, where it simply vanishes. It's the journey that you're on. We discover, of course, that we haven't gone anywhere. Lesson 278, when we see ourselves as bound, we can't know ourselves. If we choose to see ourselves as unbound, we do automatically know ourselves. The truth is always free. Truth is always free. God is always free by definition. God doesn't know any of the crap that we're putting ourselves through here in the world. Yet we have the means to remember who we all are. So in fact, it's a journey that is not a journey in the physical sense, nor the temporal sense. There's no space, no time. We don't actually go anywhere. We're simply waking up to the truth of who we are. And on the path, we call it the path. We call it spirituality. It's just a word. We call it a spiritual journey. And if any of those terms work for you in your life and inspire you to practice, good. Spiritual practice is nothing more than an allowing of who we are. It's deliberately, consciously choosing light in the present moment. It's deliberately, consciously choosing God, love in the present moment. It's a choice. It's a choice that we make. So, as always, I invite you to make it. And in closing here today, I just want to invite you to please feel welcome to subscribe to this channel. These videos have been going on a consistent basis here, 5-6 days a week since January of 2021. So that's for the past 13 months. And as you can see, we're at lesson 278 in the workbook. And once we hit lesson 365 and the workbook is what we call finished, we realize, well, it's finished. It's not finished at all. It's not finished at all. It's the beginning. And there will be more videos to come from there. Please feel welcome to also leave comments or send me an email. If you have further questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. And as you may have noted, I have no problem at all pausing the linear numerical progression of the workbook ideas to record a separate piece on any topic related to spirituality, any topic related to your spiritual journey. So if you've got questions, definitely, please, I invite you to ask them. And when you do, someone will be very grateful, someone that you may never meet from another part of the world. They may be very grateful that you asked the question that they were going over in their own mind. You could be like that kid in class that raises his or her hand and asks the question that half the class wanted to know the answer to anyway. And inevitably somebody comes up to you and says, "Thanks for asking that. I was wondering the same thing." Yeah. It's a very important part of inquiry, isn't it? So I invite that 100%. And thank you, as always, for joining me. We'll keep going with some more profound ideas from A Course in Miracles. All right. See you soon.